Alright guys, so here we are. Let us check out the Fire Mage baseline changes first, the talent changes, and then let's look at the kind of cool new stuff in the Legendaries, the Conduits, and the Covenant abilities which are coming in Shadowlands. This is a late night recording session here tonight. We started doing all the work on the mages today, and then Blizzard announced that they are wiping all of the beta characters tonight, so I'm going to try record all of the mage videos in one fell swoop, which is kind of insane, and then edit them up over the next couple of days. So, yeah, please bear with me if I'm a little bit tired here recording this one. Mastery Ignite, right, where your spells will burn the target for a percentage of the damage over time. You can see by default here, it is 9% of my damage over time is going to burn the target. This no longer spreads between targets. So, for example, if I come this, like, Flame Strike this guy, the Ignite is not going to spread like it did in BFA, where it would just spread automatically, right? I'm not really sure why they've changed this to no longer spread. You can actively spread it with Phoenix Flames. We'll come to that in a second, but it definitely feels rough. I will say that right now. It feels rough when your dots are so small that they no longer actively spread. On the beta, it just feels like, why? Why is this a thing? It feels bad. The good news, here's actually one piece of good news. Phoenix Flames has returned to the spec. This was the artifact ability from Legion, right? Our Legion artifact ability. That's here, artifact weapon ability. A 30-second recharge, 40-yard range, instant cast, maximum 3 charges. You throw a Phoenix that does a nice chunk of fire damage, right? It's kind of equivalent to a Fire Blast of fire damage to the target and reduce damage to other nearby enemies, so it does cleave damage, and it always deals a critical strike. So if I show this over here, boom, awesome. Super fun to have this one come back. I mained Fire Mage at the start of Legion and Emerald Nightmare, and it definitely felt weird to me whenever I tinkered with them in BFA not to have Phoenix Flames. I really missed it. So it's a very, very welcome ability to return. Now, interestingly enough, right now, Phoenix Flames is what will cause your Ignite to spread to nearby targets. So, I mean, let's say if I hit this guy a few times. Well, that's enough, I guess. Now, if I Phoenix Flames, then it's going to spread the Ignite to these other guys, and they're going to start ticking down for that extra damage, or for whatever damage I've done. So that's sort of the use of Phoenix Flames. Okay, a couple of other things then. So some exciting stuff, We have, coming from the Arcane Mage, we have Arcane Explosion. Bam! This is now baseline for all mage specs, right? So very simple. It costs 10,000 mana, so will burn through your mana pool. Instant cast it on the move, and just does about 600 arcane damage. We have Encounter Slow right now, throwing us off a little bit. To all enemies within 10 yards. So it doesn't have a target cap, which is kind of nice. It's not going to be super useful, I don't think, to your rotation, but it's kind of nice to have it there. And it is some like free AoE damage on the move if you're in melee, so it may have some uses. From the Frost Mage, we have Frostbolt coming baseline here, which is kind of nice. It's going to do a little bit of frost damage. The interesting thing about this is that it does apply a 50% slow, so you may have some use for this on some Mythic Plus packs. Perhaps the slow might be relevant in PvP, or maybe in some solo content for doing some kiting stuff. You know, the slow, it's there. It's not a button that's part of your core rotation, but a nice little bit of utility that you might end up using. Speaking of nice utility you might end up using, we have Alter Time come back. This is a 1-minute cooldown instant cast. Alter the fabric of time, returning you to your current location and health when cast a second time or after 10 seconds. So let's say I get a bomb on me in the raid. Okay, like whatever, I'm just gonna like be blasting this guy. Alright, cool, I'm gonna blink out, don't want to blow up my raid team. Here we go. Boom, bomb goes off, and it teleports me back with Alter Time. Very cool. Or again, I can choose when to reactivate it. So lots of cool plays that you could potentially make around this in raiding, in PvP, etc. So this is a really cool thing to come back baseline for all the mage specs. Very, very welcome. And then one final thing we have, which is Mirror Image, right? Mirror Image is also no longer a talent. It is now a baseline spell. You just create 3 copies of yourself nearby for 40 seconds, and they're just going to cast spells, right? So let's just get them going. They're just going to go do their thing. They do a decent chunk of damage, actually. They're pretty nice. So nice to have those mages in there. They're just going to be blasting away. You can see in this case they're actually doing a lot of damage because we are a Shadowlands beta Fire Mage. It's a pretty miserable experience. We can actually hardcast a Pyro Blast with this. Ooh, we got another one. That's actually going to do some pretty decent damage there. But yeah, you can see they do a good chunk of damage here. They're doing a good chunk of damage. I'm obviously not using my cooldowns and stuff with that, but it's probably going to average out to be about like 10-15% of your damage while they're active for those 40 seconds. So kind of nice. Syncs up with like a bloodless window on pull. So yeah, pretty cool. Obviously looks visually cool. Simple, just press it, forget it. Yeah, and they'll just do their thing, right? In terms of the talent tree then, we have a few changes here. You can see some of it. There's still a talent coming soon. Will rise again soon. So yeah, the talent tree has seen a few little tweaks to it. First of all, Shimmer has been nerfed for all mage specs, which is, I think, a good change. So you do get the 2 charges of blink, but they're on a 25-second recharge rate, and obviously lets you cast it during the global cooldown. So it's the choice between a 15-second cooldown blink, which is on the GCD, or the 25-second double charge of Shimmer. You can cast it while you're casting, but the longer cooldown. So that makes it a more interesting choice, I think, and makes these other talents more appealing. Of course, Blazing Soul is still the same, getting the Blazing Barrier when you blink, which is quite nice for survivability, or Blast Wave, which I think they've upped the slow duration on Blast Wave from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. So this could be potentially really nice in PvP, or again in some solo content, or whatever. Blast Wave, a little bit of love there, just trying to reinvigorate this talent row, which I think is a good call. At level 30, we have a new talent called Focus Magic to replace Mirror Image. Increases the target's crit chance by 5% for 30 minutes. And when the target critically hits, your chance to critically hit with spells is increased by 5% for 10 seconds. So, you pop this on an ally, like another Fire Mage, or, I don't know, like maybe a Fury Warrior. I'm not sure if that would work at Fury Warrior. And they're going to crit, and when they crit, you're going to crit. Everyone's happy. Both of you get a bit more benefit out of it. So interesting. It's, it's relatively passive, much in the same way that Incanter's Flow is, though it benefits your teammate as well, which is kind of nice. Certainly, I would say with Fire, you're probably a bit more pushed towards Rune of Power. Certainly for how Rune of Power ups your combustion window. But we'll see, with Combust being weaker now than it used to be, perhaps these will actually see some play. Certainly the extra crit is going to be nice at the start of the expansion when our crit is very low and the spec just feels slow and clunky. But we shall see how the level 30 talent tier pans out. Will it be just dominated by Rune of Power for most of the expansion again? Who knows? At level 35, Flame On is still there. Alexstrasza's Fury has been buffed, so that now it additionally causes the damage of your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike to be increased by 35%. So that's kind of nice to sort of work Dragon's Breath in to your baseline rotation. Does it compete well with Flame On? I still think no. I really don't see that working, and I don't know. Honestly, like, I feel like the Fire Mage would be improved if you just baseline both of these and deleted the talent tier. It would be a better spec for it, but they don't want to do that, so there you are. And then the other big change here is, well, actually one other change I actually forgot to put in my notes here, which is that Ring of Frost has also been buffed, which is kind of cool. So it now will do a 65% slow for 4 seconds after the incapacitate from Ring of Frost wears off. So that's definitely going to be kind of nice. That's some great extra utility to bring to, again, Mythic Plus or PvP or anything like that. Quite nifty. Level 50 talent row has also seen lots of buffs just to try to compete with Meteor and sort of break the Meteor Rune of Power love triangle, I guess. Pyroclasm now does more damage, which is kind of cool. And Kindling now gives you 1.5 seconds of cooldown reduction whenever you crit with those abilities on your combustion, rather than just 1 second of cooldown reduction. So yeah, kind of buffing these other talents to try to bring them more into the spotlight and mix up the gameplay that way. So yeah, I think definitely some interesting tweaks to the Fire Mage talent tree. I mean, like, I do feel like, much like lots of talent trees in the game, they could really have squashed this down, like removed just 2 tiers worth of talents, baselined several of these talents, and made some more interesting choices, and the spec really would have been better for it. But we're sticking with these talent trees, so that's what we've got. In terms of our legendaries, we have 4 generic legendaries for all mages and 4 fire specific ones. The generic ones for all mages are these: Shadowgas Ring, casting a frost, fire, and arcane spell within 10 seconds of each other, increases your critical strike damage of all your spells by 10%, and this effect can only trigger once every 30 seconds. Now this is quite funny. Like, obviously to trigger this is quite clunky. You have to cast a Frostbolt, and then you have to cast an Arcane Explosion, and then when I do this, I'm going to get a 20-second buff of 10% more crit damage. So this is quite a wonky one. I mean, maybe this could be relevant for the Fire Mage in terms of, like, boosting up a combustion window. I feel like it's very clunky in terms of gameplay, because I mean, Arcane Explosion and Frostbolt are just not core parts of our rotation at all. Like, we want to just be spamming our fire spells and getting our crits and hot streaks rolling. It's kind of just there as a legendary to kind of show off and be like, ooh, cool, look, we've got Frostbolt and Arcane Explosion baseline now. Let's have a legendary for it. So, not too excited about that one, to be honest with you. It'd be kind of annoying to use as Fire Mage, I think. Works better for like a Frost Mage, for example. But next up, we have this one. Triple threat. Casting any barrier spell grants the effects of Blazing Barrier, Ice Barrier, and Prismatic Barrier, and each absorbed shield has 40% effectiveness. So this, I mean, this is quite cool, right? They each have unique effects and quite interesting. We could see play for this maybe later in the expansion if we're allowed to equip multiple legendaries, or if they differentiate between like utility legendaries and throughput legendaries. You're certainly not going to be taking this at the start of the expansion. Maybe later on, though, it could be cool. It's certainly a really nice effect. No visual for it yet, unfortunately. I think all it does is it gives you a weaker form of your main barrier. It doesn't give you the other ones. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, that's what it does for now. A third one here, your Fireball, Frostbolt, and Arcane Blast have a chance to give you expanded potential, which causes your next hot streak, Brain Freeze, or Clear Casting to not be consumed. This one's actually quite fun. Right, let's see if we can get it to trigger here. Bear with me. This is Fire Mage, start of expansion. Riveting gameplay, here we go. So you can see we actually got that buff right away there. And here we go, we've got it back again. So this actually triggers all the time. This is quite nice. So you'll see when I consume my Pyroblast, we go straight into just having the hot streak again, which is awesome. It's triggering relatively frequently. And you're definitely going to notice this one coming through and smoothing out your gameplay a bit, which is great. I think it's definitely going to be really good in AoE as well. It's going to feel a lot better. So obviously with Pyroblast, you're kind of naturally getting crit chains. The nice thing about this is that this, if I consume it with Flame Strike, let's actually see it with Flame Strike. It's going to be pretty good, right? Let's try out some spells here. Okay, cool. We'll just throw Pyroblast until we get the proc showing up. Oh, it doesn't want to proc now. It does not want to proc on us. We have been bamboozled. We've been bamboozled. So I mean the proc chance might vary quite a bit. Oh man, it doesn't want to proc. Here we go. Okay, so in AoE, right? In AoE, in theory, I can do this and I can do like a double Flame Strike, and that could be quite cool, I think. That could definitely smooth it out. You get a couple of extra Flame Strikes out at a time, which is going to be kind of nice, because otherwise, you know, you have to restart your whole hot streak. So carrying over that full hot streak, I think, could be quite satisfying when it does proc. So it's certainly one to consider. Next up, we have the Grimveiled Hood. Your Frostfire and Arcane damage against enemies affected by Frost Nova is increased by 10% and no longer breaks it. I think this is really maybe useful for some PvP situations and maybe for some solo gameplay, but not really relevant in Raids or Mythic Plus or anything like that. Then for fire-specific stuff, this is quite cool. When Hot Streak activates, you have a low chance to cause all Pyroblasts and Flame Strikes to have no cast time and be guaranteed critical hits for 5 seconds. This is maybe a better version of the expanded mind, though from my experience, this has a very very low proc chance. Let's see if we can get it to show up here. Could take a little while. We shall see. Let's throw out a Phoenix Flames. Might as well keep that on cooldown here. Certainly, I found this one was a little bit awkward to test on beta, because it didn't have without weak auras to track the buff. It's a little bit awkward. Go with the Phoenix Flames. Come on, you know you want to proc. As you can see, the proc chance is pretty miserable, especially with the absolutely abysmal haste that we have at the start of the expansion. We are just slowly trucking here.
5 minutes later.
Oh, we got it, finally. I was starting to think that wasn't a thing. Oh my god, that took forever. Oh my lord, I've been beating on that target dummy for frickin' ages. He's done 178k damage. Okay, so needless to say, this legendary, I think it's a fun effect, right? I think it's a fun effect. Obviously, there's not all that much that you can do with it. because it's random, it's kind of hard to actually alter your playstyle around it. And my goodness, it almost never procs at all. Yeah, this legendary is not great right now. I think this has potential to be fun, like maybe with more haste. Like the spec is so slow right now. It's so slow, but with more haste, this could be quite satisfying and be kind of badass. You just start like blasting out, like, you know, you could blast out with enough haste like 3-4 pyros in a row, but yeah. This one here, casting 30 fireballs or pyroblasts, calls down a meteor on your target, and hitting an enemy player actually counts as double. This is quite cool. So let's get going here. Again, this is gonna take, it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time. All right, guys, are we ready? We've got 5 stacks to go on our meteor coming in here. Let's go. Here we go. Almost time. There it is. There she is. There's the meteor. Boom. And off it explodes. So obviously it's going to take time to build up to this meteor dropping in, but I think this is quite a fun legendary. It gives you access to meteor, you know, even without talenting into meteor, and definitely you can make some plays with Rune of Power around that as well, potentially. Like there's some things that you could possibly do. So I'm definitely open to this legendary. This one could be kind of fun. It's definitely going to be cool in PvP. You're going to be throwing out meteors all over the place. But yeah, again, we'll see how the tuning works out and whether or not you are actually able to play around it at all, or if it just ends up being extra random, free, and fun damage. Certainly, like, if you're able to spread, like, the ignites from those meteors, that could be kind of nice with Phoenix Flames and stuff like that. We shall see. After consuming 6 hot streaks, your next non-instant pyroblast cast within 15 seconds grants you combustion for 6 seconds. This one's quite cool, and you can plan around this one. So let's see if we can get this going. And I am running the Pyroclasm talent with this, right? Where I have a chance to have my next non-instacast Pyroblast do 240% additional damage. So we can have the two of these going together. You can see here's our Sun King's Blessing. It's building up. Okay, we actually do have an instant cast Pyro ready to go. In fact, we've got two stacks of it right now. I'm actually worried. We're going to throw it out because otherwise we're going to lose the stacks. This is rather awkward. I need a crit here, game. Okay, well, our next non-instant Pyroblast will trigger Combustion. And again, we could play around this, you know? We could play around this with a Rune of Power. It looks like it's not going to sync up here with... oh god, we don't have enough haste, do we? Oh my... We did it! Barely. We did it, barely. Scorch him. Okay, the Scorch didn't quite get in the window. So, it's pretty much like everything about the spec. The low stats make it rather a misery to play with, I'm going to be honest with you. But I think there is potential with this. It's quite cool. It's something you can play around. Certainly if the Sun King's Blessing, if it syncs up with Pyroclasm, I feel like they're, again, with the haste being so low, this is the problem. That it's so inconsistent to get through this stuff, and it's so difficult to actually fit that cast time in. It will help with weak auras to actually track this stuff as well, like to flash and warn you when you're going to run out. Like, we almost missed that window there. But this could potentially be very cool, sort of a Pyroclasm based build. Go in with those combustions, and like that combustion's gonna do it's gonna do quite a bit of damage. You're gonna be able to do a lot of damage in that combustion, and you could plan around with your Phoenix Flames and your Fire Blasts around those extra combustions. I think it could be quite neat, and I think this one, while it feels bad now, I think this has the potential to be fantastic with gear. And then finally we have the Grim-Veiled Hood. With each consecutive critical strike will increase the damage you deal with crits by 2%. So, heck, let's go Rune of Power here. Why the hell not? So, let's go into this, shall we? Okay, so we're going to Rune of Power. And here we go. Oh my god, I didn't realize that we had... we ran out of Fire Blasts. We're going to Scorch, but we're up to like 10% extra damage. It's something. So yeah, 10% extra damage during combustion. It's okay. You know, like, it's just going to be not all that useful outside of your combustion. But I mean, it's relatively straightforward. You know, getting some of those crit chains, you're going to do more damage. It's very passive. It's just a background number thing, which is fine. I think it's fine. Not as exciting as playing around. Like, this one has gameplay. You can play around a bit. This one has gameplay if only procced more often. And yeah, more meteors are cool. So this to me is like the most passive of the legendaries, but each of these seems pretty powerful in its own sense. So yeah, Fire Mage legendaries, not too bad actually. I think they're pretty solid. And one of the good things, the few good things I think about this spec, for the conduits for Fire Mage, here we are. They slot into your soulbind trees like this. You've got finesse conduits, which are utility enhancing, endurance conduits, which boost your survivability, and potency conduits, which will boost your damage, right? And you'll go through a tree and it'll look something like this, right? For the Fire Mage, we have right now 3 endurance conduits that you can choose from. Cryo Freeze, while inside Ice Block, heal for 15% of your maximum health over the duration. Diverted Energy, your barriers heal you for 20% of the damage absorbed. Or Tempest Barrier, gain a shield that absorbs 5% of your maximum health for 15 seconds after you blink. I don't know, I would say none of these are particularly insanely good on the Fire Mage. Like maybe there's a couple of interesting interactions, you know, like you can obviously generate extra barriers with Blazing Soul, so that could be kind of cool with this barrier talent over here. Or Shimmer, you know, you're going to be blinking a bit more often, gaining that shield, stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. Gets a bit more interesting with the finesse conduits, though. We have Winter's Protection. The cooldown of Ice Block is reduced by 30 seconds. That's awesome, right? More immunities that could sync up with some fight mechanics, and always good in Mythic Plus to have more immunities. Flow of Time. The cooldown of Blink is reduced by 1 second. If this conduit scales up in item level, which I think is quite possible, the cooldown reduction on Blink could be really nice to make you an extremely mobile spec, so that's definitely one to keep an eye on. And Grounding Surge, successfully interrupting an enemy with counterspell, reduces the cooldown by 1 second. Again, not a huge deal right now, but if we add on like some extra item levels to this conduit, I mean, in a hypothetical situation, if this scaled up to like 9 seconds cooldown reduction, well, from 24 seconds cooldown on counterspell down to 15, that would be a kick equal to a melee DPS kick in terms of cooldown, which would be absolutely crazy. So that could be potentially be an absolute game changer for Mythic Plus. We'll see. And then finally, Incantation of Swiftness. Invisibility increases your movement speed by 20% for 6 seconds. This one seems a lot less useful to me compared to these other ones, which have really interesting and fight-affecting effects. I mean, invisibility being a 5-minute cooldown, not super seeing it, but maybe somebody could let me know what that would be for. I'm not really sure. Then for our potency conduits, there's only 3 right now for the Fire Mage. We have Infernal Cascade. So this is kind of like your Blaster Master effect here. And this is obviously extremely good. While combustion is active, your Fire Blast grants you 3% increased fire damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. And of course, again, like once this scales to item level, this could be super powerful. I think you're almost always going to want to be running this. You know, you are going to have most likely 3 Fire Blasts going off at least in your combustion. So just at basic level here, 9% more damage for most of your combustion, for at least half of it. That's a massive deal. So yeah, very strong. Master Flame. Flame Strike's damage and radius is increased by 6%. I mean, I guess it's a bit of a Mythic Plus thing, a bit more AoE damage. And then finally, Flame Accretion. Fireball grants 5% mastery when it fails to critically strike. Again, this one could be quite good. By default, like our mastery is quite low. We got 9% mastery. An extra 5% on top of that's going to be really good. And Fireball is not going to crit all that often. So that's just going to be some more dots for you to play with, some more Ignite. I'm not sure how the tuning will work out in this. Will it be worth it or not? I don't know. And again, there is one more conduit we will expect to see. I'd say on the whole, the Fire Mage conduits are... they're okay. I particularly like the finesse ones. I think the endurance ones are relatively straightforward. I also think that the potency ones are relatively straightforward. And generally speaking, just seem to be like, you know, increases in damage. I might be running Master of Flame if I'm running lots of Mythic Plus. Or I could just be running, you know, Infernal Cascade and Flame Accretion for now. Which is going to be useful just in every sort of content. So we shall see. We shall see. Relatively, you know, they're okay. Not terrible. Not amazing. The finesse ones are definitely the intriguing ones that could really change the game. The Kyrian abilities for Fire Mage. Of course, we have Summon Steward. This is the signature ability. Gives you your flask. Right, File of Serenity, which is awesome. Restores 15% health, removes all diseases, poisons, curses, and bleeds affecting you. So obviously, you're going to be the bane of assassination rogues and PvP with that. Not super useful for a mage, seeing as we can already remove those things with Ice Block, for example. But still certainly going to be good in some fights. There's no question about that. Situational. Radiant Spark, then, is the Covenant ability for mages that are in the Kyrian Covenant. 30-second cooldown. 40-yard range, 1.5-second cast. Conjure a Radiant Spark that causes 750 arcane damage instantly, an additional 300 damage over 8 seconds. The target takes 10% increased damage from your direct damage spells, stacking each time they're struck, and this effect will end after 4 spells. This is actually really good for Fire Mage. This works the best for Fire Mage. Again, much like the other mage specs, Fire Mage, you want that to be proccing really off your pyros, right? Your pyro crits, which is not something you can always can control. But nonetheless, you're going to pop this going into your combustion, and it's going to up your damage in combustion. And you do have a few tools, certainly with Phoenix Flames, you have a few tools to sort of play around with this and make sure that you are going to hit something good on that final Radiant Spark. In the talent tree, obviously Pyroclasm is going to work with that as well. Like, you could sync up, you can bank those Pyroclasm charges potentially, and they may easily line up with your Radiant Spark that you're going to be able to get off, like, bonus damage, like whatever, have Pyroclasm built up, do a couple of quick hits, and then spend double Pyroclasm charges on the last couple of charges of the Radiant Spark and get the bonus 30 and 40% damage on them. That could be really nice as well. So I think there's certainly options for Radiant Spark. This one works particularly well for Fire Mage, I think, compared to the other mages. Of course, a downside is that it 30-second cooldown does desync from the 40 seconds of Rune of Power, from the 45 seconds of Meteor. So that's something to be aware of. That's something of a problem there. But yeah, it's fine. Like, I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty solid. It does its job. It just might be more irritating to min-max than you might think, but works the best for Fire Mage out of any mage spec by a small margin. Alright, for the Necrolord Covenant abilities for the Fire Mage, we have, of course, Fleshcraft to channel, 2-minute cooldown, 4-second channel, form a shield for 20% maximum health, and if you channel near corpses, that goes up to 50% maximum health. Very nice for mages. This feels great. You can channel your shield between Mythic Plus packs and then like blink to catch up with your group with Shimmer. We're a nice mobile class, so this feels fantastic. And with this on your barrier and your ice block, you can feel like and altered time, of course. You can feel very sturdy indeed. So it's an awesome one. Unfortunately, Deathborn, although this works very well for Frost Mage and Arcane Mage because it syncs up with their 3-minute cooldowns of Arcane Power and of Icy Veins, and spamming Frostbolt and spamming Arcane Blast obviously works very well with those particular cooldowns and some of their legendaries. For Fire Mage, this is not as exciting at all. So it's a 3-minute cooldown and 1.5-second cast. Transform into a powerful Skeletal Mage for baseline 20 seconds. It's upped by 3 seconds by Conduit here. So 20 seconds. And while in the form of a Skeletal Mage, your Fireball will hit up to 2 enemies near your target, and your spell damage will be increased by 10%. The problem that this has is that it does not sync up with, well, crucially, Combustion. And even so, in Combustion, you're not even necessarily casting many Fireballs. So if you're using this just for the spell power in Combustion, it's not likely to see much use. In fact, it's likely to see very little benefit. Like 20 seconds, you're going to spend 10 seconds while just spamming Fire Blast, Pyroblast, and then filling in with Scorch, because Scorch is simply faster than Fireball, and you're just fishing for the crits to get more Pyros. So yeah, using this for spell power boost for Combustion, yeah, you get 10% spell power, and then you get 10 seconds afterwards of a bit of cleaving with your Fireballs, but definitely awkward. And then there's the fact that you're going to have to delay it by a minute to sync up with your next Combustion if that's something you want to do, or else just use it for some rather boring cleave damage with Fireball, which is not really doing much at all. This is a pretty poor one, unfortunately, for Fire Mage, which is disappointing because although it's not like overwhelmingly insane for the other mage specs, at least it works very well for them, and it works consistently, and it doesn't really get in the way too much as a 3-minute cooldown. It's just you pop it alongside their other 3-minute cooldowns. So yeah, disappointed to see Deathborn not be very good for Fire Mage. And then finally, the only one I'm actually able to show you because Night Fae is still bugged. I'll try to get it into the video, with the Night Fae one into the video, if I can still do it after they wipe all the characters, but that might take a little while. Although good news is that I've enjoyed Arcane Mage so much that I'm very likely to level a mage on the beta, put them into Night Fae to really try that with Arcane Mage and see how that works. So we might try get some gameplay of that for Fire Mage too when we get there. But first of all, let's talk about the Venthyr here. Venthyr, we have Door of Shadows, which is really nice. 1-minute cooldown, 35-yard range, 1.5-second cast. That teleports you to wherever you want to go in that 35-yard range. So that's awesome. Even more mobility for a mage is great. potentially dodge some fight mechanics. I mean, you're already able to dodge a lot of stuff. I mean, with Shimmer and with Blink, right? And you've got, obviously, Cheat Death with Cauterize. You've got Ice Block. You've got Alter Time. We've got a lot of tools for the mage along these lines, but Door of Shadows is another one to add to that toolkit if you wish. And then we have what is, in my opinion, probably the worst Covenant ability in the entire game, and that's Mirrors of Torment. This is for the Venthyr mages. A 1.5 minute cooldown, 1.5 second cast time. And this is the very, very, very definition of amazing in PvP and next to useless in a large chunk of PvE content, which is not what I want to see, but here you are. Anyway, you conjure 3 mirrors to torment the enemy for 20 seconds. Whenever the target casts a spell or ability, a mirror is consumed to inflict 750 shadow damage, and their movement and cast speed are slowed by 15%. The final mirror will instead inflict about 2,000 shadow damage to the enemy, rooting and silencing them for 4 seconds. So obviously, again, like those utility effects, like slowing move speed, slowing cast speed, rooting, silencing, that's super, super potent for PvP. Like, that's a super powerful ability there. In PvE, though, like, okay, yeah, you're gonna find some mobs in, like, dungeons that this is gonna work on well. Like, in Mythic Plus, you'll have some use for it. But at the same time, there's gonna be lots of mobs that are not gonna cast stuff often enough for this to actually, you know, take effect. Or you're gonna be interrupting their casts, so it's not actually gonna take effect. Or you're going to use it like on a boss, and obviously against the bosses, like bosses, movement speed and cast speed slows, they're not going to work on the bosses. Roots and silences, that's useless against bosses as well. That's just not going to matter. So you could easily end up in a raid fight where this will literally do nothing. Like, it's be like using it against this target dummy. Looks cool and like, ooh, swirly mirrors. And then you're just going to watch this 20-second buff at 3 stacks just tick down. And you're going to go, oh, this raid boss, it doesn't work. Does nothing. So, yeah, again, like for me, Covenants are, well, the design idea of a Covenant is you pledge yourself to the Covenant for really probably the entire expansion. And really focus on that fantasy. It's gotta feel so bad when you've got a Covenant ability that is so useless in so many forms of content, whilst being so strong in other forms of content. It could feel really bad if, you know, you want to do raiding on a mage, you also want to do PvP, and you're really supposed to have Mirrors of Torment for PvP, but it's really terrible for some of those raid fights. That is a nightmare situation, so I hope that they change this. We shall see. Make it a PvP talent. It's cool for PvP. I don't know. We shall see, but yeah, not a fan of this one. And then we have finally the Night Fae, and unfortunately, again, I'm trying to record this stuff, and it just doesn't work. It's quite tragic. The quest line is bugged. I just cannot get the Night Fae Covenant ability. There's a world quest which blocks the completion of the quest line for the Covenant, and they're going to be wiping the servers. I've been trying all day, and it does not want to cooperate. We can't do it. So fingers crossed. That we'll be able to get some footage of this Covenant later. But what it is going to give you, it is going to give you Soul Shape. Right? So I can show you Soul Shape here in game, which is kind of nice. Like, gives you a 15-yard teleport. You turn into a Vulpin for 12 seconds. 50% movement speed in Vulpin form. You can, again, reactivate Flicker every 4 seconds for more blinks, which are very cool. So a nice movement ability. Again, we already have lots of movement as a mage, but it's good. And if you do finish the quest line, you will get Shifting Power, which is a 45-second cooldown. Draw power from the ground beneath, doing 2,500 nature damage over 6 seconds, reduced by haste, to enemies within 15 yards. While channeling, your mage ability cooldowns are reduced by 3 seconds every 1.4 seconds. So you get a total of 12 seconds cooldown reduction on all of your abilities with this. So that's obviously very nice with like things like Rune of Power, with Combustion, with Meteor, all that good stuff with Phoenix Flames, refilling your Fire Blast charges. A lot of interesting gameplay there. I'm very excited to test this one out. The downside is, and of course it's going to do really good AoE damage too. The downside is you have to be relatively close to mobs to use this one, and you have to stand still for 5.5 seconds or so, which is a very long time. So it's going to be relatively difficult to use this, I think. But I'm holding out hope for this one. Like this has the potential, I think, to be a really fun Covenant ability for all the mage specs. We shall see, because obviously each mage spec has their own substantial cooldown, and getting cooldown reduction on that is going to feel great. We'll see if it works out. I will let you know when I get back to and I'm able to actually test it. Gosh darn you, world quests blocking Covenant quest lines. Beta. And there you are, guys. They are all the different parts of the Fire Mage on the Shadowlands beta. I'm sure a lot of my negativity came through for this spec in this video. And I kind of want to deal with it here at the end to sum up what I think are the big issues with the Fire Mage, because for me, there are several very big issues. The first and the biggest issue is that the spec fundamentally, I think, feels bad to play. I actually think the spec needs quite a bit of a look to fix up its baseline gameplay. Certainly a lot of that comes from being the start of the expansion and having low secondary stats. But like Fireball is a slow cast time. It's like 2.1 seconds with the current haste I have on this character, right? It's very slow. You spend a lot of time casting Fireball, and it feels like your spec is moving at a snail's pace. And I've not felt this bad with any of the other specs. Certainly the other mage specs didn't feel this bad. They felt like they had much of a better pace to them. There's more stuff happening. I think one of the big issues comes as well in AoE, massively so in AoE, because when it comes to dealing AoE damage as the Fire Mage, you're basically entirely reliant on those Fireball crits to then convert them with Fire Blast into your Hot Streak and get out those instant cast Flame Strikes. And that could feel like, you know, you could easily go into a pull, and this happened to me multiple times. You know, you're going into a pull, and like whatever, your Frost Mage is dropping Frozen Orb and Blizzard and blasting Ice Lances and Fingers of Frost and cleaving with all that stuff. Like whatever, your Paladin friend is popping off Divine Storms left, right, and center, and you're there, and you could spend like 10 seconds casting 5 Fireballs in a row, not get any crit, and just be like, all I've contributed to this pull is trying out 5 Fireballs. It's like no damage at all. I haven't even got to a Flame Strike, and you finally get to a Flame Strike, and it doesn't even do that much. And then you're sat there with Phoenix Flames. I'm so happy that Phoenix Flames has come back. I love that. And I think that it could really help to supplement the Fire Mage AoE rotation and get you to those Flame Strikes faster. But it's just the fact that you want to be saving that to spread your Ignites for whenever those Ignites actually are worth spreading. I'm not even sure if they are all that worth spreading, to be honest with you. Is it even worth it versus just using them to enhance your hot streaks, especially in AoE? I don't know. And that's a problem for the spec, isn't it? If it's not even clear what the heck you're supposed to be doing, why am I even trying to spread these tiny Ignites at the start of the expansion? Why is that even a thing? I don't know. I just don't know. So yeah, the spec, it feels slow in a single target. The combustion window still feels good. Combustion is still a cool cooldown, even though it's obviously a shadow of what it is in BFA with all of the external things enhancing it. But it's still a good cooldown. It looks awesome and it feels good, like just throwing out all those crits. But yeah, it's when it comes to that cleave situation and the AoE situation that the spec just feels unnatural. It feels cumbersome. And it just feels like it doesn't quite click. It doesn't quite make sense. Like hell, just make Ignite not spread. I think that'd be a simple solution. Make it not spread, but like make Flame Strike a juicier damage dealer, and have Phoenix Flames there as that extra cleave cooldown that helps me build up those Flame Strikes in AoE, and I can kind of play around that and consume those charges and not feel bad about it. Like they're there to supplement the AoE burst and work with that. And that's it. And I'm not worried about, you know, well, is this Ignite like how do you even know if the Ignite's worth spreading? Like in a default UI without weak auras to tell you, how do you even know? How do you even know how much damage the Ignite's doing? How do you even know if you should spread it? It's like it's guesswork, really. You're kind of going, oh, okay, I guess like rule of thumb, I'll do it after a Pyroclasm or after a Combustion. But like, is it worth to spread an Ignite? Like that you've just built it, like I got like 3 Pyros in a row. Is it worth spreading this Ignite now on these 3 mobs? Does that make sense? Is it gonna do it? I have no idea. And I don't know how people are supposed to know that. So yeah, I do like the Legendaries for Fire Mage. I think that I'm kind of looking more to patch 8. This is bad, but I'm looking more to patch 9.1 or 9.2 for Fire Mage. I just think it's gonna be too awful to play at the start of Shadowlands. I really do. But I'm looking forward to patch 9.1, 9.2, when we do have more haste, we do have more crit, and the spec is flowing a bit more. That maybe then I think those Legendaries could have some really fun potential, you know? And you could do some really fun things playing around, you know, Pyroclasm and the Sun King's Fury, right? Or whatever, the Sun King's Blessing, where you could use that that non-instant Pyroblast to go into Combustion. That could be super unique. That could be really fun. Or like calling down extra meteors, all that stuff. The Legendaries, I think, have a lot of potential for being quite fun to play with. The Conduits are quite bland, I will say. And the Covenant abilities for Mage, I think, are some of the weakest Covenant abilities, in my opinion. it's definitely a concern for mage as well, that you probably, as a mage, you probably want, well, at least for me, let me just speak for me, I won't speak for you, but speaking for myself, I like when I play a mage the ability to play different specs for different situations and to multi-spec with the mage. And I find it's very easy and natural to do it because they're all ranged damage dealers, right? So you kind of want a Covenant, or I kind of want a Covenant ability that is going to be useful for each of those specs. And that's definitely a concern because like Necrolord works very, very smoothly for Frost and for Arcane, but it really is clunky for Fire. The Venthyr one is just terrible in PvE for all of them. Kyrian works okay for Fire and it works okay for Arcane. It's quite clunky with Frost. I mean, it's quite clunky. It's a bit clunky with all of them. It's a difficult thing to min-max, and that feels a little bit underwhelming, I think. So I'm holding out some hope for Night Fae. Ironically, it was the one I had the most hope for, and the one I couldn't get to test to see how punishing that big channel time actually is. I'm hoping that Night Fae will be a thing that might bring all the specs together, and that will provide a ray of hope to illuminate the Covenant situation for mages for me. But yeah, overall, I mean, I've already said it, haven't I? Fire Mage for me is, right now, I'm kind of expecting it to probably be one of, if not the worst spec on Shadowlands launch. That's what I'm kind of expecting. Having played it now, and just like I played the Frost Mage in the dungeons, I had a lot of fun. I played Arcane Mage in the dungeons, I had an absolute ton of fun. I really enjoyed playing both those specs. They felt great. And then I played Fire Mage, and I felt miserable. I had a horrible time. It just didn't feel good. So yeah, Fire Mage gonna get a thumbs down from me. Not looking great. But hopefully later, like, 6 months or so into the expansion, which is a disappointing thing to say if Fire is your favorite spec, but 6 months into the expansion or so, maybe that's when the pieces will click a bit more snugly into place and the Fire Mage will feel a bit better. Maybe all it will take is some raid gear. I don't know. We'll see. I'm pretty sure that Fire Mage is pretty awful at the start of BFA as well, and didn't get better until later on. So we'll see. That's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, sorry for the bad news. I'll see you next time for Arcane Mage, which actually is looking fantastic and fills in, I think, the bursty damage and the bursty cooldown damage dealer role. I think it fills that really well and much better than Fire Mage does now. So I'll see you guys for the Arcane Mage video. Talk to you in a bit. Bye bye.